guys, this is my sanctuary offering for the week. I'm calling this the homage to the easy A because there are and have been in the past, um, certain classes that were considered not as important. They're not heavy academic classes, and so you could sort of fill your schedule with them if you needed to like get a grade point average. And I think that there are some ideas here that relate to our overall happiness um, and well-being, lifelong learning and stuff. So, the shop class, home ec, PE, um, music, dance, arts appreciation kind of classes, like VH1 Save the Music, that are often struggling for funding. And when you think about it, when you get to be my age, I guess I'm talking to a younger audience here. Um, what I remember from some of my straightforward heavy academic classes versus the ones um, that I actually use every single day. I mean, mind body wellness, wishing well, the way I feel. Um, and the way I appreciate life is all so very much informed by these kind of classes. So I wanted to talk about that today. And what sort of prompted the conversation was I was looking through, during Friday Chill, I was looking through old cookbooks in the house. This is the Culinary Institute of America. It's an old version. The New Professional Chef, 5th edition. And this is not my discipline at all. I like cooking, but I'm by no means an expert at all. But I was amazed at how similar some of the design thinking is when you're preparing to be a chef. This is not my book. So the aesthetic training that's involved and how that is significant as it relates to governance and our overall happiness and well-being. So I was amazed by this. This happens to be a chapter on basic preparations of sauces, which if you're being a chef, look at this old school book, it's so funny. These are important things if you're a chef. So I'm looking through these like sort of beginner materials if you've made this decision. So because sauces are made in different ways and serve different purposes depending on when and how they are used, they are grouped into rough categories. And rough categories, we can think of those, we're familiar with those with apps and the web and stuff. But think about our affinity groups and our neighborhoods and our themes. So here we're just talking about categories of sauces. Ground sauces and contemporary sauces. These categories form a framework, like the AVA 2016 platform, for understanding sauces in terms of both technique and application. And, any kind of framework, and when we start to think about design thinking as something that applies not just to perhaps what your or our personal disciplines are, but the disciplines of others, how similar those are. So sauces, you could substitute the word neighborhoods, are not just an afterthought. They serve a particular function in a dish's composition. So even in the process of trying to set up the frame for this shot, I was thinking about composition. I was thinking about, I keep taking my glasses off because now it's annoying to see the reflection. I was thinking about, wow, I want to show the cookbooks that show different sort of culture groups, our different states. I pulled, cookbooks off the shelf and put them into the shot. So I was thinking about composition here, this little thing that my kids made a zillion years ago, and the idea of top stitch and trying to do something interesting and have light coming in on the figure. So how we frame things up, there are conscious choices, involved with that. So here they're talking about sauces. So that's why the stir pod, these skills, if we think about design thinking as a way of making conscious choices, it becomes really interesting, destination education kind of stuff. It is in learning to understand why a certain sauce will or will not work with a particular dish that's the process of developing culinary judgment. The process of developing culinary judgment. And to me, what that sounds like is the process of developing discernment. So as we're talking about belief DNA and belief ID and an inside-out approach, the whole idea of teaching design thinking and then applying it, composing it, realizing that we are making conscious choices. So we're going to have different ideas. Like today I happen to be reading stuff from the Buddhist tradition, and there are very different ideas between traditions, but there are also a lot of similarities. And I want to make sure that I hit my points here. The reason why we talk about the moral compass and we talk about design thinking, in this case we're talking about sauces, which I don't know, but I can understand the language because it's similar, like balance and texture and interest. We're living in a dynamic universe where we're not all going to be coming from the same place in terms of philosophy or approach, but when we can recognize that there are similarities, those are the things that we're going to be focusing on as we put our affinity groups together. So I thought that was particularly interesting. Most sauces serve more than one purpose. A sauce that adds a counterpoint flavor may also introduce textural and visual appeal. Sauces generally serve the following purposes. They introduce a complementary or counterpoint. This kind of stuff also applies with decor thinking. So when we're looking at R&B and maker pads, so this was inspired by, unfortunately, my experience going through a foreclosure process after losing my gallery in the Great Recession, and my husband was, during that period, I'm trying to keep this little gallery open, was unemployed twice. So already being in a gallery is going to be a challenge. But but it got my design thinking going about, I was seeing neighborhood after neighborhood with lots and lots of both commercial spaces and residential spaces with foreclosures happening. And I was like, why couldn't we make it easier? Why couldn't we make the process easier for, when our property is distressed, that we could have sort of formatted in the pods, food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, sanitation, ways of transforming homes and other spaces into, working spaces for the community. Why just let them sit vacant? So again, we're talking about sauces, but we're talking about complementary. In this case, like a color palette. I'm using, for this particular house, I've got a red and a green. Those are complementary colors. That's design thinking stuff. So just my quick sort of offering, making connections, even though it sounds like it's random, it really isn't. What we're saying is, we're going to go neighborhood by neighborhood, making conscious choices about what works. And a particular sauce, though it may be beautifully executed, beautifully created, may or may not be appropriate for a particular meat or fish or vegetable. And that relates to our design economic development standards for our sustainable living pods and pods ecosystems. So if we can do that in a way that we can develop programming and then connect the dots via our melting pot culture, which could go viral, it could go global very quickly. I'm just sort of making the case and connecting these particular dots between, food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, sanitation, so food and shelter, mindful making, and so forth, and just making conscious choices about that. That we're not victims, in other words, of our government. We don't need to talk about government as being something like an entity, like it's this monster that has its own mind. Like, we are the citizens. So it's up to us to say this is either working or it's not working anymore. And how we're going to do that relates a lot to just having these kind of communication skills. So the last thing I wanted to mention, and I am practicing being more brief, because as your future president, you need to make quick speeches, was the idea of sharing innovation. So Belief ID and Belief DNA. Belief ID will make it easier to just innovate, in the situation that you happen to be in. So if you are, it has been a challenge for social marketers. Every time there's a new technology, people say, do we need an XYZ, whatever the latest thing is. And a couple of years ago, marketers were asking the question, how do we go from broadcast to social? How do we start to have these relationships? And this is how, actually. So there's nobody. See, we need plumbing work. There are Airbnb guests downstairs. This is the idea of, demi-glace is a brown sauce. So if we take a look at this, this is a great example explaining, like, if you've got a particular work and you can put a belief ID on it, and then other people come along and they say, oh, I see this basic idea, this basic sauce, and I can produce these other derivative works from this work, then everybody along this chain can participate in the value of that original work. So the idea is that just if you're in the situation and you love a particular product, I love Sharpies, right? So if I am working with a particular product and I'm just like, wow, what would be really great is if this product did this, and all I have to do is post it and I get an automatic ID, then I don't have to write a business plan. I don't have to stop my day. I don't have to try and be an expert at everything. I can simply be in my environment, working with the products and having a relationship with the big global brand. So that is the other thing that I just wanted to mention in terms, and this is all just coming from, this is just design thinking from, looking through some old cookbooks in the house. And that's kind of the goal with flow time and sort of developing conscious environments where we're not expected to try and do and be everything. So yeah, it seems a little weird that we're going to do a pinups presidential kind of theme, and that you would have, a president that's focused on painting and singing and designing. At first blush, that might seem really strange. But then when you get into the detail of it, and you get into the detail of the personal profile, connecting in relevant ways to other folks, then it makes all the sense in the world. In light of social technologies, redesigning governance to really be tailored to us, to really choose the correct sauce for the correct, fish or veggie, is just sort of established design thinking, and that's something that we share globally. So that's my message for the day, in praise of the easy A. The easy A that promotes lifelong learning and ultimately brings us a lot of happiness into our actual real world lives, not in our abstract lives. But everything that we touch and see, nourish ourselves with.